while we let you ponder, you guys missed, or maybe you didn't, but if you did, you missed the Clash Live event that was last night. It went all the way off. We had Part Salou performing. We also had a friend of Sam Wise. We had Blaze YL also performing. Did you go?
London, how are you feeling? How's everyone enjoying the band? Hey, they're sick, innit? Give them a round of applause.
You see this night, Clash Live, I've dreamt it over in my head time and time again.
1, 2, 3, I
I felt that, someone gave me that still.
The Prime Minister has announced the most drastic limits to our lives that the UK has ever seen in living memory. All gatherings of more than 2 people are banned. From tonight, you can only leave your home for very specific reasons.
So 2019, when we get into the end of it, I had just done my first UK solo tour. I'd just come back from Brazil and America. I did my first ever stateside shows, which was epic as well. And 2020 was starting to come, and I was really putting myself in the position where I was going to be the main act as opposed to being the support act anymore. It was a really great position for me to be in. And then all these mad changes happened all of a sudden overnight. It was super weird to just have nothing to do, but it was a good thing. I think it was positive because we just had time to breathe and you could reconnect with friends and family, albeit over Zoom, which again is a very surreal thing. But yeah, I moved out, I got time to just really sit back and look at some self-care, and I think if anything it made our industry as a whole realise that we do need to put the brakes on and not taking every show that's there and really pushing our bodies to the absolute limit. It's not healthy, and it was always going to crash and burn sooner or later. So yeah, it was good to just have a breather.
End of 2019, going into 2020, I was getting ready to release Make It Out Live. It's all mixed and mastered, and I had to do that, shoot videos and shoot the cover. And that was it, so I was just ready to do that and, I don't know, do shows and just I don't say just the regular stuff, but basically just the regular stuff, like get ready to release. So when all the pandemic and all that started, I already had video shot, I had the cover shot, I had it mixed and mastered. The only thing I couldn't do, obviously, was that listening party, and I wanted to do shows and maybe do a tour this time. I'd done a tour last time, but hopefully it would have been bigger, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully. But couldn't do that, so I just had to do bare remixing of how I would promote it, basically. So I had to do a virtual listening party. So I just said, Lil, I'm here, had my mic, I'm just talking them through, like a radio station, basically, a private event radio station. So I'd done that was vibes. And that was it. Like, apart from that, I just had to focus on being inside. And that sounds stupid, but I had videos that you just roll out and rare, but I don't know, man. Yeah, I didn't think to the project. I just had to try and remix what I was doing and see what I won.
The first lockdown came as a huge shock to all the different communities that make up music in this country. I think for artists, the immediate shock was in terms of economics. Without touring, how do you survive? And it forced people to really look again at their careers and look what they valued and look what they could expand upon. You can split that down as different areas. For someone like a DJ, it became incredibly difficult to get by. For someone like a songwriter going on tour, then became less of a valid experience. But that in turn caused people to find new solutions.
Well, from the interactions we've had, I think artists have been very much in the same boat as everyone else. First, it was a matter of just the shock of this thing that never happened before. Then it was kind of a matter of finding your rhythm.
Obviously, I can't write another project because, well, for me, I'm just in my house. What am I going to talk about? I've ordered Uber Eats again. Like, that's not really interesting content, you know what I mean? So, and I've just spent a year making Make It Out Alive. So all my thoughts and hopes and dreams and all these things are already on that and I haven't lived no more extra life to start writing. Obviously, I'm just in the house, innit? So I just thought, I never produced before. Let me try to learn how to produce. I've never done beats ever. So it was a new thing. And then started making the beats. And then I just thought, okay, let me try and do a thing where I put my old acapellas on the beats, give it a new vibe, and demonstrate a new skill I've tried to learn, basically. So it's been all right, man. My thing's been all right, but I can't lie.
The most emphatic trope throughout this has been the lockdown album, which is something that we kind of see all around us already. It's all this projects and produce and creativity and content that people have created being drawn into these album-length projects. And you can see that on a huge pop level with someone like Charlie XCX. You can see it on various indie levels, something that's smaller scale, but equally has the same resonance. And then if you look at an area such as club culture, DJs and producers have locked away from their audiences. And even if you use streaming, it doesn't quite have that same connection. So for a lot of people, that energy has turned inwards, and they've looked at replicating that in the studio and actually producing something that's going to create that connection but isn't quite in a live format.
One thing I did get to do though was really find the Jess-based sound and chuck myself into production, which I don't think I would have ever had the time to do if we didn't have this big amount of time to do nothing. It was now or never that I needed to become a producer and really find what that Jess-based sounded like. And I've been so lucky enough that my records that I've put out this year have connected with people. There was a real shift in the sound that we were making because we weren't on dance floors to listen to other DJs and get inspired by new sounds. The sound kind of went to radio. If you listen to all the stuff in the charts, it's not heavy club music anymore. It's gone to, I don't want to say commercial, but it's gone to that more piano heavy stuff, which people can listen to indoors because we're not in big loud clubs to hear that sort of stuff. So there was a real shift.
So when kind of the rug was swept beneath everyone, that really kind of removed the need for a promotional cycle. Usually, you know, a band drops a couple of singles, they'll play some warm-up shows, they'll do all their promo, the album will drop, and then they'll be on tour for 2 years. Sometimes they'll plan it around a festival season or whatever, but that's all gone out the window now. So a lot of artists were kind of just forced back home, and a lot of them adjusted to it in different ways.
Lockdown has lent a greater intensity to these creative projects, and when I speak to a lot of musicians, what I've found is that the knowledge that they can't go on tour and that fans will only have this singular artefact means that they've taken extra care and attention over everything that they've done. They always give 100%, but now they're giving 110% over every area, whether that's the bass part, whether that's the final mastering, whether that's the artwork. Everything has been amplified because they need to make this count, because there won't be any kind of touring and there won't be any kind of DJ sets around it. All they have is this artefact that is a message from them to their fans. I think your experience of lockdown as an artist is very much linked to the support networks that are around you. Sadly, if you're a smaller artist and you really rely on music and touring to be your sole means of income, then this has been a very difficult period to navigate. If that money isn't coming in, then where's it going to come from? If you're a much bigger artist, like an iconic stadium arena level artist, then there are a number of different ways to access your fans and a number of different ways to keep people engaged. So for these people, it's been a rather more tranquil experience.
Like all the bigger artists will be fine. They'll always find a way to make them pee, because obviously they're in contract with XYZ and they need to get their money back. So they're going to say, yo, like we'll say we'll hire somewhere like this. You got the cameras, then we'll stream it off, safe. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the other artists, I think man should get back to talking to your fans. So again, you go on your Bandcamp, like there's Bandcamp Day and all these things there. Go on your Bandcamp, start talking micro engagements. You know what I mean? So boom, here's something for you lot. You have to build up your relationships directly with your fans. Like, hello, not just, yo, gang, not none of these, like just broad terms, like everyone thing. You have to know who you're talking to. I mean, I just started using my YouTube more for just basically chatting shit. You know what I'm saying? Just catching joke and whatever, because I can't do a big video every minute and do this and that. So I'll create some engagement, we'll talk on my YouTube and safe. So it's still in the mind. So if we ever do get to Buskers, the numbers should be up. Like the 2 previous years, I just put on my own shows, like just rented the car from Enterprise and me and the man got in the car and just drove about. So it wasn't like I had big tour plans. It's not like, like a signed artist or a mad excited artist. Echo will set up their thing, like when you have your release and it's just me in my house. Like, so I think that's also an advantage of what I was doing anyway. Like, it was always just me anyway. You know what I'm saying? Me and my brethren and, you know what I'm saying, and my distributor.
After a while, although it was fun to just stop, it was getting pretty worrying that I was just watching my bookings drop one by one like dominoes, and it kind of felt like all of the hard work I put in for the last 6 years had just all amounted to nothing, and our music industry didn't exist all of a sudden, and it was a real worrying time as to whether that was ever going to change again.
Do you remember that there was a period around kind of mid-March last year when it was all starting to feel a bit shaky, and it was the day where Boris gave a speech that said, "Many of your loved ones will die," and everyone was like, "Shit, this is real now. This is here." That was pretty scary, and I think it was around the same time that they announced the Glastonbury lineup, and everyone was kind of the mindset that Glastonbury could happen and that lockdown would work, because I was just like, surely everyone staying at home for 6 weeks will fix this. If it's a disease that travels from person to person, people not being around will surely stop the disease. But it was only a matter of time until Glastonbury cancelled, and then you were still hanging on to being like, oh, maybe we can have Reading and Leeds, maybe we can have gigs in the winter. But it became quite apparent that this was bigger than anything, and the most important thing was everyone just staying alive and staying at home. But it was really encouraging to see people kind of improvise and innovate and see a lot of like really safe socially distanced gigs and stuff like that happen. But yeah, the normality of live music started to feel like a distant kind of dream.
Yeah, the first couple I did with We Are Festival and Love Juice was just really surreal, that it looked like a cattle market. Like, there was barriers up and you just had to sit in groups of 6, and it was really segregated from each other, and that alone is kind of not what raving is about. Like, raving is about being close to people on the dance floor and making friends and meeting new people, and that aspect was taken away due to social distancing. But on the flip side, at least we got to do something, and it was nice to just be able to go out and play all my new records that I'd just been making at home in my studio, and it was good to be able to give the fans something. They've been trapped at home for so long, waiting patiently for a moment to hear music on a system, and that moment alone was pretty emotional. So it was good to be able to do something. The summer was coming to an end, and we weren't sure if we were going to get to go back indoor venues or we were going to have to do things that were outside. And the government went ahead and said that we could do the indoor stuff, and we did my first ever solo Jess bass show where I was the promoter and I played the whole time. I played all day long, and I'm so glad I did it, because it was around a really uncertain time where we went back into that lockdown for 4 weeks, and my date of the party was going to be 2 days after the lockdown was supposed to be lifted, and me and my team weren't sure whether we should just stick to the date, because if we stuck to the date, we were going to be the first party that weekend when the lockdown had lifted, so the vibe was going to be extra special, or we pulled it and moved it to January, because we all know how uncertain our government rules are. They change all the time. So we went with our gut and we stuck to it, and it was the most special party I've ever done, because the vibe was there, because we just come out of lockdown, and I'm just so happy we stuck to it and did it. So off the back of that, we were coming into Christmas now and New Year, which are the busiest times for us DJs, and we were just excited to maybe get some financial support again, that we were going to actually be able to start making some money that we had swallowed all year from having to do nothing. And the bookings were flying in. Like, I was full back to back. Like, I wasn't going to be at home for Christmas, put it that way, or New Year. I was away working, and I was so excited to do that. And then Tier 4 happened.
The music industry as a whole has created a situation whereby artists have to tour or they're not going to get any money, and it really is work or want. And if you look at what's happened in the past 12 months, then the pandemic has just smashed through this situation and demolished any means of really creating a valuable income for these people.
If a band is just starting out, or they've just released an EP, they should be playing like your Shacklewell Arms or your Adelphi in Hull or your Rescue Rooms in Nottingham, whatever. They should be playing these like 100 cap venues on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night and building up their stuff from there, taking around a couple of people in a van. And for a lot of artists, you've got the 1-2 punch of COVID and Brexit. So the Brexit deal has essentially wiped out the idea of visa-free touring. For ages, it's been so easy for tiniest band to all cram into the back of a van, go across the channel and play X many gigs and travel to XYZ. That's never going to be the same again now. So now the way it's looking is that when a band travels, they're going to have to deal with the individual rules of each country, which is an easy thing to absorb if you're Ed Sheeran or Adele or, you know, your big boys. They've got the manpower to absorb those costs and the visa things and the carnets and like having paperwork for every single piece of kit you take in and out of a country. These are all things, it sounds quite boring, but it stops your grassroots bands from being able to afford to tour. And if they can't tour, then, you know, that has a real knock-on effect. Not only, like Ed O'Brien from Radiohead said there would be no Radiohead if they couldn't hop across the channel and play and just hammer the European festival circuit with ease. That was where they learnt their craft. That's where they became Radiohead and absorbed all their influences and, you know, really grew as a live act and, you know, became something special. Without that ability to tour through Europe with ease, it's going to have an amazing impact on artists, not only for their own growth and development, but, you know, for their income. There's only so many times a band can go around the UK. You can't play Hull every Tuesday for the rest of your life. You need to go out there and, you know, make your thing overseas. And also, there's a fear that it'll stop a lot of bands being able to tour the US, because before you can get a visa to tour the US, you need to prove that you have an international reputation. And that has historically meant, look, this band has played X many shows in Europe, they have an international reputation. With that removed, how are they going to do it?
At Clash, we ran a number of major event strands at venues around London. And we also partnered with festivals across Europe to look at those events in London. It's a great shame that two of the venues that we worked with have already gone under and won't be returning. When we did those events, it was a means really to connect with our audience, to meet the people who were buying the magazine, to give them it from our hand to theirs, to meet the musicians who were in it, and to just have a party. It was a great atmosphere, and it was a real illustration of the way that journalism can connect and enhance the community that is working alongside. Over the past couple of years, we've enjoyed a great partnership with Metropolis Studios in West London. Metropolis is one of the most historic studios in the city. It's a spectacular building, and the live events were a huge success. We were able to get artists playing fan-only intimate shows in a sweaty room with some incredible sound as well.
So I've been at the studio for 4.5 years, and probably the first format that I actually launched when I was here was our Clash Live series. So yeah, I hooked up with Alex from ClashMagazine, and we kind of put together an idea for a live series. And for 3 years we ran every single month, you know, a live show in Studio A with 80 to 100 guests, and so many acts came through here. And the whole idea was that even though it's a bricks and mortar building and that our clientele are really B2B, that's really who we target, not really consumer, but having that many people come into the building meant that management companies, independent record labels, PR companies, fans, producers, engineers all had access to a building that previously they'd never have access to. So us as a business, it's a really important way to amplify what we do as a studio. Of course, that's been completely taken away now. So yeah, we started the year as we did with any other, just working with all the brands we work with, including Amazon and MasterCard, doing all of our sort of usual live events, experiential experiences that we do with brands, working with ClashMagazine on our live shows. Just before lockdown, we managed to get our Nothing But Thieves live to vinyl away, which is typically downstairs with 40 guests who sit behind the engineer as the band would cut two tracks live to vinyl. And that was the last event we did of 2020, and it's been the last event we've done with guests since then. You know, we just went into a period of trying to re-establish and re-evaluate what we need to do as a business. Fortunately, we were very persistent with making sure that we got all of our COVID plans in place. So pretty much from the day of the first lockdown, we had all of our one-way systems, all of our COVID protocols in place in the studio. We had temperature checks happening. We had everything you could possibly need in order to facilitate artists being able to work at the studio. Fortunately for somewhere like Metropolis Studios, it is a big studio, and people and clients are able to work fairly self-contained within a space without really ever coming into contact with anybody else. Mastering was still able to operate. Of course, they work in their own sort of self-contained studios that were not doing attended sessions, but they were getting busier and busier over that period. But pretty much from the end of May and June onwards, all of the UK music industry has been busy at home writing and creating, because they haven't been on tour anywhere. We're then obviously looking for places to be able to record and mix. So we managed to sort of facilitate a pretty busy summer and autumn. Of course, then we've gone straight into the second lockdown again, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster, sort of moving in and around and making sure we're always up to date with the latest guidelines. All of our sort of partners and colleagues in the rest of the industry has been pretty badly affected, obviously, by everything. But in terms of as a place to be able to create content, we spent a large part of the summer creating a live streaming infrastructure at the studio so that we'd at least be able to broadcast content and performances and sessions to audiences and facilitate the brands that we currently work with and artists and our usual clients come into the studio, give them other services that they'd be able to tap into. The other thing I think that labels, bands and management companies particularly like, obviously, as a venue from which to stream from, in terms of obviously the high quality in terms of audio that's coming out of the building. You're not going to really match that in many other places. So we're a little bit restricted by space, but definitely not restricted in terms of the kind of quality that we can offer in terms of audio and video broadcast. We did a couple of streams for MasterCard. We did a pretty big stream for with O Wonder in a series called Live for London. We did 2 streams with O Wonder and then with Neo, which were pretty incredible. Then we did a live to vinyl test stream for Virgin Money and MasterCard with Tom Walker, all hosted and wandering and moving around the studio, showing people it. So translating what was an experience with guests that had never been filmed before into a completely digital experience. And again, we had to completely reposition how that experience was presented, both to the brand and to artists. That went down pretty well with the fans and the guests. So the series has continued, and we did in December, we relaunched the series again with the Vamps, and so that was our sort of big December show. Other partners we work with, like Amazon Music, we've done a series called Listening Parties, so we've done another big series of live streams with them, which have been really good, which we're hoping to continue this year. But on the whole, it's been just a sort of matter of us being able to reposition what we do as a studio.
It's been interesting to see how the live stream thing's kind of evolved over the last year. So it started obviously with just your band who was ripped from the road, who wanted some kind of connection, so they just stuck a camera in their living room and played guitar on Facebook Live or whatever. And that had its value at the time, because everyone was just like, oh, I remember enjoying quite a few of them because I enjoyed like the intimacy of it, and it felt like a very one-off moment in time. Some of the artists that were doing it weren't the kind of artists to ever do that kind of thing.
We've noticed the rise of live streaming on Instagram and Facebook, and we really wanted to work with some of the artists to enhance that and to push it forward a little bit. Working together with the charity WaterAid, we created the bathroom sessions in which artists would, purely and simply perform in their bathrooms in a stripped down, whether musically or otherwise, manner. And it produced a lot of really incredible moments.
It was quite nice to just be like, oh wow, this actually, I feel a connection. That's quite nice. And some artists are still doing it, and some of them are still great, and a lot of them are like doing great stuff for charity. Frank Turner's raised shitloads of money to save venues and stuff like that. A lot of people have been doing some great stuff. But then there came a point where it was like, right, we need to up our game here, and artists started really, really putting some high production values into it, and still making them seem over time like you could only tune in to watch them at a specific time. So it felt like a gig in that sense. It felt like because everyone was watching it at the same time, and this was your only chance. It felt quite special. I remember there being a lot of that. And that meant everyone was talking about it at the same time.
So from the top, we did everything from our festivals, which included Junction 2, Elrow Town, which was taking place in Trent Park. And we also did our events at Tobacco Dock. We did 6 events that year at Tobacco Dock, which is our flagship venue. And then on top of that, we did a wide range of other events, everything from a 24-hour party with Innovisions at Fold to events at Fabric, Ministry, Electric, the Roundhouse. I mean, we worked with a lot of venues, Brixton Academy, yeah, it was a big year for us, 2019. We were midway through this event series and magazine called Sphere, and we could see, just in terms of customer feedback, those that were getting a bit kind of tetchy about coming to the events, ticket sales would start to slow right down to the point they fell off a cliff. And we knew that things were looking pretty dark. So we took the decision there and then to bring those events to a close, refund all the customers, and then start looking at what the year ahead looks like. At first, we was kind of, I think like a lot of everyone else, hoping that we'd all be back to normal by the summer. The audience and the customers have been literally so supportive. It's been amazing to just see people in huge numbers hold on to their tickets and be really patient. And we're still going through that process now. You know, we've still got events that were due to take place before the summer, which are now being pushed back to the end of the year, and some are even being pushed back a whole year into 2022. So we've lost essentially potentially 2 years of trade now. How we kind of work through that and how we use it to look at other opportunities that might appear whilst we can't do physical events has been a big focus of ours recently. So, you know, we've got some exciting ideas on the horizon and events on the horizon, but just not in a physical form. So we decided, once it came clear that Junction 2 wasn't going to happen physically last summer, that we needed to look at other ways to mark the event. We wanted to look further into digital events and what that means and how you can replicate the feeling of going to a festival, both in terms of atmosphere, in terms of sense of community, in sense of music, in sense of different stages, into a digital context. So we worked hard in developing that concept, working with the artists that were due to be part of the festival, and essentially working out how we can build a festival kind of site, essentially, in a digital context. So with the guys in our team, in particular a young guy called Elliot, who is our digital marketing manager, and he came to us and said, can I essentially build a computer game, basically, which is a reflection of people going from one stage to the next in a virtual kind of setting, and from that also create that sense of community with chat rooms and everything else, so that we can mark the fact that Junction 2 isn't happening physically with a digital event. The number of people from across the world that tuned into that event blew our minds. It was like, you know, we was hoping for, I mean, we was doing it all in-house. In reality, we weren't quite sure what to expect. And we had a number in our mind of what we wanted to achieve. But when the stats came back and we was like, we've done over like 3 million views in 150 countries, when we're a boutique London-based electronic music festival, was like, fucking hell, this has got something in this. So then from there, we decided we wanted to do it again. We wanted to prove that just wasn't a one-off, and that we could deliver that on a second time. So we did, just last month in January, we did an event called Junction 2 Connections, which was based around bringing the sounds of 3 musical cities that are iconic to techno into people's living rooms at a time when they can't travel to them, basically. So we focused on Detroit, obviously the birthplace of techno. We focused on Berlin, and we focused on London. And from there, we was able to elevate our brand again into the living rooms of people that in reality had not heard of Junction 2 before the pandemic. And it just shows that if you can deliver these digital events in the right way, and they can feel like events in their own right, you can really build brands in a massive way, which on a global level, which perhaps wasn't there beforehand. From the success of the Junction 2 digital events, we really wanted to kind of plug into how we can bring the digital events, which are very much here to stay, in conjunction with our real world events when they can happen again. So we was exploring different ways in which that can be achieved under what is now being called a hybrid event. So essentially, we launched just recently Tobacco.Virtual, which is one of the biggest projects we've ever undertaken. It's come with a massive investment. You know, we're looking to really push the technology as far as we possibly can with this project. We want it to feel as real as possible, and we want people to engage in it as if they're going to an event. And it all launches at Easter. It's really exciting as to where this is all heading, and we definitely feel that when we can get to that sweet spot of real life events happening in parallel with the digital events, that's when this is really going to get very exciting for us as a company.
So one of our biggest brand partners is LWE. For 2020, we were pitched to do 40 events with them across London, festivals. We were doing something in Albania. We had a party in Ibiza. LWE have been incredible though, and really innovative for this whole lockdown scene. We've continued to create content with them by doing a weekly editorial piece with our ones to watch and up and coming artists up and down the country. So unlike a lot of brands, Relentless invests all of its marketing budget in purely music to be aimed at different demographics across the scene and the whole culture surrounding it. So unlike a lot of other brands that kind of invest in billboards, TV adverts, Relentless kind of go against the grain and really want to be seen as a brand that people invest in as a style and culture choice. In 2019, we partnered with arguably one of the biggest rap artists in the UK, Stormzy. Did a huge campaign with him where we did a pop-up shop, Murky store in Soho. He was there, he came and met fans, he launched his can. We did a huge in-store promotion where people would buy a can to meet Stormzy. We took over Thorpe Park for the day with him. It was absolutely epic. There was 100 of us and Stormzy running around Thorpe Park having a lovely time. So when we first went into lockdown and realised that we were no longer going to be able to partner with one of our heroes like we always do, we didn't have time to meet with anyone, well, it just wasn't allowed. We knew that we needed to continue to have exposure and reach out to our fans. So I had a big think and I was like, right, what's next? How can we still be authentic? How can we still connect with the scene, but without just throwing stuff out there for the sake of it? And the next move for us was radio, absolutely, because it's authentic. We could live stream, we could have interviews attached to it, so it seemed like the perfect moment to get involved with that. When I was thinking about radio stations, I was thinking who would suit our demographic, and for us it would be Rinse FM. They've been underground, but they cover every genre of music. Reach out to 18 to 30-year-olds who exactly who we're looking for. So I started off a mini campaign with them at the back end of 2020, which went incredibly well. We've now gone on to partner with them for the next year. We'll be doing a whole host of radio shows. We've also got a studio there. So I hope to be able to give young up-and-coming artists the opportunity to come into our studios, use the equipment, and learn from some of the best. I think since the pandemic, radio has found a whole new respect and a whole new place in the scene, where people will obviously experience stuff in real life. They'd probably rewatch sets on YouTube or watch boiler rooms, where none of that content's been able to be captured, especially for me and I think some other young people. Radio has been the go-to because you can still get on with your day. You're not having to look at a screen, but it's just a constant stream of amazing music. And I think it's a great way for up-and-coming aspiring artists to start, where they might warm up at their local clubs before. That's not an opportunity to do that anymore. So they can get themselves heard to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on radio station. And then, when the world starts again, which will hopefully be very soon, radio stations then go on to do parties and become more of a brand than just a radio station.
Soul started in my uni room, and we managed to broadcast to an entire street in Southampton.
We finally settled on coming back to London. We originally thought it was only going to be for 2 weeks and then we'd be back in the studio.
We soon realised that we needed to adapt in order to survive.
We had gone from seeing people at the station every other week for the past 4 years to not seeing them for months on end. And that really, really affected our motivation and creativity.
It's reset, we're 50 today. Get your phones out. Don't turn the light on you. Don't turn the light on you. Don't turn the light on you.
Entered 2020, did Mixed Garage, not knowing it was going to be our last party, but the party was so good. It's probably the best party we've had in a venue. No Signal came now. When we came up with this whole radio concept at that time, it's like people didn't realise they needed it. We didn't even realise people needed it that much. It is a bit daunting, it's a bit scary as a thought when you think about it, but it's also positive. It's a nice feeling to know that, wow, so many people like our content so much. It's like a distraction away from what's happening in the real world.
The live experience is the foundation stone of music in this country and all around the world. If you look at these venues, these independent venues across the country, that is like a petri dish of different elements coming together, and they will adapt and evolve and change and swap ideas, and that needs to happen face to face.
We all discussed all this stuff and basically ignored this cloud of coronavirus, and I woke up the next day and it all sunk in again, and I was like, right, this isn't good. I'm not being paranoid, but I think this is actually going to be a major problem, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's no work soon.
We had no idea how long we'd be shutting for. We rescheduled most of the shows that we had into the end of summer, beginning of autumn. I think the general feeling was that, you know, this thing would be around and would probably wipe out the summer.
I think the first month of lockdown was panic in terms of what you've just put a handbrake on a business that was hurtling at 100 miles an hour for the first time ever. We've not been open on a Saturday night. It's like unheard of for a venue like us, but for every venue. First month was just getting over that, thinking, right, we'll be open in May. How are we just going to get through 6 weeks without being able to pay rent?
I think initially one of the most common themes with the venues was obviously income. You know, rent, landlords were still charging rent. Utility companies, they were all still expecting to be paid regardless of whether the venue was open or not. A lot of the teams that we work with in these venues are very small and they are families. And to suddenly, you know, be able to offer someone a full-time role, albeit them being freelance, to not being able to offer them anything, and actually, especially initially, not knowing whether you're able to offer them anything at all before furlough schemes kicked in and things like that. I think that's been one of the biggest things.
You can't just retrain yourself, and you know, there was a whole conversation about transferable skill sets. It just doesn't work because we work in such high-pressure jobs that we thrive on that adrenaline, we thrive on that like feeling of live music.
When you remove one part of the industry, you realise how they're all connected. So if this band can't play here, then this roadie doesn't get paid. Then not only that, but like this venue doesn't make any money, this barman doesn't get paid, this journalist can't go to this gig, you know, this PR person can't do their job, you know, this manager doesn't get paid. Everything is connected, and you see that as soon as you take the legs out from underneath.
Which brings us to the next problem, which is the loss of income for an entire industry.